I've spent the last decade coaching people how to get strong, starting with personal training, going through CrossFit, and eventually finding weightlifting for the past 8 years. I've trained with Chinese weightlifters and been mentored by some of the greatest minds in the industry. And one of the most beneficial lessons I've learned is helping people navigate their strength training journey. In this video, I'm going to go through 9 lessons that I wish I knew when I started strength training. Tip number 1 is where to start. If finance wasn't an issue, the number 1 place to start would be through a coach. You're essentially kind of paying to skip the line. They can help you navigate what exercises to choose, what rep ranges to choose, and they can guide you on how hard that you can train. The next best option in this same number 1 is if you don't have access to that and money's a little bit tight, you could go the templated option. There are plenty of really good apps out there where you can spend a small amount of money and they come with tutorial videos. This builds into point number 2, which is start conservatively. So this is as broad as you want to make it, but at the very least, it wants to be you need to start with lighter weights, you need to start with lower frequency, you need to start and just see how it goes. Because the first time you do, say, squats as an example, you're going to be incredibly sore. If you've never done strength training before, your tendons, your ligaments, the little things like that are gonna lag behind. This builds into point number 3, which is build your technique. There is no rush, especially if you're going to start your strength training journey. It's going to be a lifetime. That's if we look after our body. We can do this forever. It can be one of the best things for our body, but can also be something that breaks us down. So you want to build your technique in all exercises. A point that I'll get into in another video is that the more efficient you get with your technique, the more you can get out of less. So the more efficient you'll be with your time and with your training. Number 4 is what exercises. Now, this is a very, very broad strokes place to start, but we want to learn how to squat, we want to learn how to deadlift, we want to learn how to push, and we want to learn how to pull. Now, what that looks like is up to the person. If someone had never strength trained before, I'd probably start them on machines and I'd start teaching them the patterns through that way, especially if they're going the uncoached way. In my gym, we don't have a heck of a lot of machines, so we use things like dumbbells before we get to barbells, and we slowly ingrain the patterns, because a squat pattern, be it a goblet squat, a front squat, or a back squat, are essentially the same thing to the human body. We want to start and build that progression up. So if I can get a really good workout with, say, like a dumbbell, and they've just started their journey, then that is a really, really great place to start when building technique. There's a lower skill demand to it. And you can, once you've got a pattern, if someone can goblet squat perfectly with like a 25 kilo dumbbell, and then we move them onto a barbell, it's really, really easy to teach that person how to do a barbell back squat. So we're starting to kind of paint a picture of the exercises that we want to do. The next question that always pops up is, when do I add weight? And there's a ton of different ways to kind of go through this. The most common one in the industry at the moment, especially when you don't have 1RMs or percentages, is kind of using RPE as a bit of a gauge. Like, how many more repetitions do I have in the tank? Or reps in reserve. I try not to explain this in too much great detail to beginners, but like, when to add weight would be that when you can smash out, let's say your rep ranges is 8 to 10, when you're smashing out 10 with good form and you're getting the 10 reps pretty consistently, so it's like 10, 10, 10, I might look to add weight. I'd probably add weight on that before I would add a set for a beginner, because we can see good progress for a little while with that. And that's why I would this is a bit of a bonus within this point, is I would use ranges when I'm in my earlier phases of my training. I'd go 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 15, things like that. So that it makes it a little bit easier, because some days you're gonna walk in and you're not gonna get 15. Or if you're like at the gym that we're at, we have 12.5 kilo dumbbells and the next jump up is 15. So that can be a big jump depending on the exercise. So if I was doing that and I had like a 10 to 12 range and the person got their 12 reps out, if I go up to the 15s, they're probably going to find that they can't get the top end ranges out, and that's fine. We'll sit on that weight for that exercise for a couple more weeks until we do get it, and that's when I would look to progress that exercise. The next one is, how often do I train? Now, if someone's a beginner, 2 to 3 days a week is a really, really great place to start. You could do 2 full body days, you could do high-low days over the 3 days, and then you could just swap each week. It could be upper, lower, upper. The next week could be lower, upper, lower. There's no real magic formula to it. And I'd almost argue that you don't need a super strict plan in that first year. You just need to be making sure that you're hitting most of the body once a week as a really, really easy place to start. The next point, and this isn't necessarily strength training, but this is something that everybody overlooks, because as soon as someone gets into strength training, they completely throw out any form of cardio. Now, yes, if I lift weights and I have short rest periods, that gets my heart rate up and that can be considered cardio. But fully neglecting any type of direct cardio work that could be like 10 to 15 minutes on a bike, going for like a 45-minute walk, something that gets your heart rate up for an extended period of time, neglecting it can be a downside. And this could mean that, like, if I have 45 minutes to 60 minutes of strength training, my last exercise or two aren't hit with the same level of intensity because I'm just fatigued because my cardio system's not carrying me through to the end of the session. This brings me on to point number 8, which is don't specialize. I think once people start getting into strength training, there's so many areas within strength training you can kind of like identify with, and you'll have someone that's like, I'm a powerlifter, I'm a weightlifter, I'm a strongman, I'm a X. I think through the early years, the bigger your vocabulary on exercises can be, the better. So like initially, if someone was a super beginner, I'd just start them by learning how to squat, to bench, to deadlift, to press, potentially experimenting with some Olympic lifts. But I think that you could potentially have years with a very, very general training base, and it would only benefit your training in the long run. I think sometimes people come in, they start strength training and they want to say highly, highly specialize in one of the three. I think it's just a quick way to kind of take the fun out of training for the sake of training. Even here, we're a predominantly weightlifting gym, but the first kind of 0 to 3 years, even though we're teaching people the skill of weightlifting, we're doing general strength training. We're trying to keep their cardio up just to some extent, although they resist it as best they can. And the goal for that is to give them a broad base. If I'm not hyper specialized in something, I don't identify as something, if I struggle for periods, which we will in our strength training journey, it doesn't hit me as hard, especially in those early years. And that brings me perfectly into our last one, which it needs to be fun. Strength training is fun, it's enjoyable, it's something that is literally a lifelong pursuit that can come in and out of your life based on life circumstances, whether it's having kids, whether it's business, whether it's whatever it is. And this is kind of married in with the previous point on specializing. Sometimes when people hyper specialize, they put a lot of their eggs in one basket, they kind of lose the joy and the fun of training. This is something that I haven't necessarily struggled with personally, but as a coach, seeing people be disheartened when they would hit plateaus for long periods of time as if it was like a reflection of them or it was a reflection of their effort, it took the fun away from training, it took the fun away from strength training. And that's not the goal of it. The goal of it is to be enjoyable, and it's going to go up, it's going to come down. But as long as over the years, it's like investing in the stock market, you're just slowly building. It is one of the most fun and rewarding things that you can do. If you enjoyed this video and you're looking to get into a little bit more weightlifting, I've got a really super beginner video right here that'll be super beneficial. Thanks, guys.